Welcome back, Beth Chase here. I'm the producer of Know Thy Risk eTips. This is a continuing education eTip that covers the specific rules when implementing a text messaging program in your pregnancy medical clinic. This eTip is a little bit longer than our usual 5 minutes due to the amount of content that we need to be sharing with you. Text messaging is one of the best ways to communicate with your clients. But remember, texting your patients should not be done from cell phone to cell phone. Text messages should be sent from your computer using a web-based texting system because this is more secure. There are a number of web-based text messaging systems out there, and some of them are free and others cost a little bit, but the ones that are free are oftentimes just as good as the ones that you pay for. We'll talk a little bit more about this later. The rules that we discuss here should be implemented when using any text messaging program, whether you pay for a text messaging system or not. Remember, HIPAA has said that a medical appointment date and time is considered private health information. Therefore, you must treat any text message appointment reminders very carefully and implement the following rules. Rule number 1. There are several governance policies that must be approved by your board before you start a text messaging program. These policies create guidelines to use when staff and volunteers communicate with patients via a text messaging platform. The second rule is when a woman calls your medical clinic for the first time to make an appointment for a pregnancy test or another medical service, keep in mind she is not a patient yet. Therefore, how you handle sending a woman a text message who is not yet your patient is somewhat different than how you would handle a woman who is already your patient. First, for the woman who's not yet a patient, but who has called to make an appointment for a medical service, the receptionist simply needs to secure verbal permission from the caller before sending them a text message reminding them of their medical appointment. Second, the receptionist notes in the phone log that permission has been given to send a text message. Next, your receptionist needs to get the caller's cell phone number and the name of their cell phone provider like AT&T, Sprint, or T-Mobile. I'll explain why we need to do that in a few minutes. Then your receptionist generates a text message on your computer-based texting system and sends it to the potential client's cell phone using the computer, and remember, not to use a cell phone. Finally, a copy of the text message is placed in the appropriate file. Once a woman comes into your medical clinic for medical services, now she is a patient and text messaging her requires another set of actions. The first thing that is required before sending a text message to any patient is a signed consent to text form. This form should include disclosure information that HIPAA wants to see addressed. The two primary things your consent form should address is, number 1, what your patients should do if they have medical emergencies, and number 2, about confidentiality issues. If you need this form, I have one for you that also covers getting patient consent for emailing, but I'll tell you more about this later. Now, the copy of the signed consent form and all text messages goes into the patient's file. Copies of text messages should be kept for at least 7 years. Now let's talk about a HIPAA regulation regarding what must be included in the body of every text message. It's a HIPAA regulation that a disclaimer is embedded in the body of your text messages to your patients. This disclaimer should cover confidentiality issues and lets the end user know how they can opt out of any future text messages from your pregnancy clinic. Here is an example of what that disclaimer should include. For instance, it talks about how the information that is in that text, it may contain information that is privileged and confidential. The second thing, if you look at the bottom sentence, the very last sentence at the bottom of this paragraph, you will see here where it says, if you wish to not receive text messages from this entity, please revoke your consent as soon as possible in written form to, and then that's where you put your organization's email address. This ability to revoke permission for them to be receiving text messages from your organization is absolutely critical and a big part of the HIPAA regulations. If you need these resources, I have mentioned here in the video, I have a sampler package that includes the following documents. Governing policies for texting, emailing, and faxing. It includes a text message consent form, a disclaimer to be embedded in the body of your text message, which we talked about earlier, a text messaging decision tree that is used as a roadmap for following regulations, a phone log, and a list of cell phone providers, which I'll explain to you in a few minutes why it's so important to have this information. You may already have these documents, but if you need them, you can purchase this texting package for $17 by clicking on the link below. By the way, a special thank you to Lorraine Mazurek, our National HIPAA Advisor, for her contribution to the text messaging package. Now let's talk about how you can send text messages free of charge using Google. You can use Google to send text messages free of charge, as long as you follow the rules that we have discussed in these two videos. First, you need to get a Gmail account by going to google.com. Then, use your Gmail account to send free text messages by hitting the red Compose button located on the left side of the page. And then you want to type into the to box the client's 10-digit cell phone number and the cell phone provider. I have included a list of the cell phone providers' messaging addresses in the sampler package, or you can go to my free downloads page on my website and get it there. Let me tell you how this works. I know it sounds complicated, but really it isn't. Trust me, if I can do it, anyone can. For example, if the patient's cell phone carrier is AT&T, you would key into the to box something like this: 500-555-777, which is the patient's cell phone number, and then you would send it to the at txt.att.net, because that is the AT&T's address to use for their texting. Here's an example of what it could look like. Below the red arrow you see in that box is the telephone number of the cell phone of your client or your patient, and the at txt.att.net, which is the AT&T address. Now here is a picture of what this could look like when it's all put together. At the top, you see in the to or the send box the cell phone number, of your patient, and also where it says at txt.att.net, that is the AT&T address. Then in the subject line, you have mentioned there that the subject is your medical appointment. Now, if you go down to the box where the actual message for your text message goes, there you can read just a reminder that your appointment with the ABC Pregnancy Medical Clinic is Thursday at 10 a.m. So now you've communicated the reminder of the appointment to your client or to your patient. But the important thing here is, if you look right underneath that, is the disclaimer. And again, this disclaimer should be placed in the body of every text message that goes out to any of your patients. In these 2 risk management e-tip videos, we talked about the best practices and the HIPAA rules for text messaging. And we also looked at how you can use Google to send text messages free of charge. You could pay for a text messaging system, but I kind of like to use something free as long as it works well. I hope that you found this continued education video on text messaging informative and helpful. If you have any questions, please email me at beth@chaseadvancement.com. And until next time, may God bless you and keep you as you continue to protect the sacred work that the Lord has entrusted to you.